Hello and welcome to our show for the love of animals. I'm Greg Bauer and my partner Darlene Pigford is not with us today, but we're going to carry on anyway, and we have a very interesting show for you today. And I would like to mention also at the beginning that we are dedicating the show today to a cat, Woody, who passed away very recently and was with Darlene and me for well over 13 years, and you'll hear a little bit more about that when we have a transition in our program a little bit later. But we have such an interesting topic for you today, aquariums. And I don't know about you, but I've always been interested in aquariums. I love to watch them. I've never had one myself. But if you're ready to deal with an aquarium and think you want to, we've got just the person for you today. Mary Farrell is with us, and she's an expert in aquariums, and she's going to give you all the basics of things that you need to know. So Mary, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to be with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. And as we take a look, when we talk about aquariums, let's suppose that I say I want to start an aquarium. Mm-hmm. Help me get started. What do I need to know? What do I need to not know? And that sort of thing. So let's start with the basics.
First, you'd really want to have an idea rather of what you want from your aquarium. Mm-hmm. There are several routes you can go. A lot of times people don't want something that's a lot of maintenance, and sometimes people want something that is going to be rather big. So it really depends what scale you're looking for, mm-hmm. which usually would start with you deciding what size aquarium you're going to want. Okay. That's really going to tailor the entire experience for you. Okay. Because you can go with something as small as like a gallon, or you could go up to 250 gallons, honestly. And really, it's not difficult to get it started. It's just you need to know what's going to go into it, really.
And you need to know what to do as the ideas in your mind grow for the size of this aquarium.
Yes.
Because it does seem like that once you are bitten with the bug of an aquarium, you want to do a little bit more and a little bit bigger.
It does seem that most people I talk to, whenever they've got one and they really like it, they start to acquire another and then another, so it definitely does grow.
Well, let's suppose I want to just start with basics. What do I need to know and what do I need to look for?
Okay. Typically, the starter aquarium that I would think of would be a 10-gallon. As far as tropical fish go, you'll usually be able to fit about 6 or 7 in it. Okay. You're going to need a filter of some sort, and you're also going to need a heater typically. Okay. Depending on which fish you pick. But the filter and the heater are going to be your two most basic elements that are going to go with what you'll need.
Okay. Can we get just an approximate idea of, let's say that's a basic thing we're going to start with, about what kind of money are we talking about with that?
The tank is probably going to cost you about $15 to $16 a 10-gallon would. Okay. The filter, I would say, is about $15 or so, and the heater is going to be around $23 or so. Okay. So probably somewhere in the $55 to $60 range.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that seems reasonable. I mean, mm-hmm. Aquariums are really the things that you love to sit and watch. I've been around aquariums. I just love to sit and watch mm-hmm. fish, and we'll talk about some of the other creatures that you can put in them too. And this time we're talking about a wet aquarium, aren't we?
Yes.
And so we'll talk a little bit maybe about a dry aquarium mm-hmm. a little bit later when we talk about what other animals or what other creatures you might put in there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have the aquarium. Do you need a lighting for it?
You can go without lighting. Most people are going to prefer to have some sort of lighting with their aquariums. If you're interested in getting some, like a hood for it, it's usually going to be about another $20. Okay. If it's not sold with it. A lot of times the aquariums are going to be sold with the hoods included.
Okay. All right. I know, and particularly if you have a household that has cats in it, you probably want a hood.
The hood becomes more important, definitely. Definitely.
Well, now, what kind of material? I mean, we put water obviously in the aquarium. What other kind of materials might we want to put into the aquarium?
The two most common are typically, for at least the bottom of the aquarium, are going to be gravel or sand. Okay.
And how often do we have to clean this aquarium?
It really depends on the aquarium and what's in it usually. Aquariums that have goldfish are going to be a little dirtier for some reason. Goldfish like to make more of a mess. But just tropical community fish, usually you'll wipe it down once a week, wipe down the glass with like a sponge or something.
Okay.
And you'll usually use like a gravel vacuum every 3 or 4 weeks on the gravel just to clean it out.
Okay. So now we're adding to the things we've got to have with the aquarium. So when we talked
Just a
about the
little bit.
basics,
The sponge you can usually get anywhere. The gravel vacuum for a 10-gallon would probably be $10.
okay,
But it's not absolutely necessary. Some people just scoop their gravel out and rinse it, but the gravel vacuum does make it a little bit easier on you.
okay. How often do I need to change the water?
There's a lot of debate about that usually. You never really want to take all the water out because all the water in there has good bacteria for the fish.
Okay.
So typically, if you're going to need to do a water change, I would first get your water tested to see if you need to. But usually it would only be about a third of the water. That would be all that you would take out
Okay.
and add some fresh water. So.
Now, what kind of, can I use tap water? Do I have to use treated water, distilled water, or what's the best kind of water to use?
I think that usually most people are going to use tap water. A lot of people prefer distilled water. The most important thing I think is that you use some kind of dechlorinator no matter what kind of water you use, because there's always going to be some instance in the water that's not going to be as healthy for the fish as it would for a person.
Okay.
So.
Now, when you're changing the water, do you take the fish and put them in another another tank or something like that, or do you leave them in there while you're cleaning it?
Some people do have separate tanks for the fish that whenever they clean the tank, they move them. You can usually just work around them and they don't mind it too much. So.
Okay. Well, of course, I guess that depends. About how many fish, and we're going to talk about some different kinds of fish a little bit later in the program that would be good to have in your tank. And I get my question now. The kind of fish that you put in there, do we need to worry about them being compatible with each other?
Typically, whenever you go to get your fish, whoever's selling them to you is going to kind of guide you a little bit, especially if you're new, because everyone understands getting into something new, you're not going to know everything all at once. You do need to kind of watch out for what you put together. Goldfish in general, you only put with goldfish unless it's a very large aquarium.
Okay.
There are aggressive fish, and usually whoever sells you fish is going to warn you if they're likely to nip at your other fish. So.
Why do people have such a fascination for aquariums? What's the real benefit of having an aquarium?
I know for myself, I just find them very calming, really. I mean, you don't get the same kind of experience that you would with a cat or a dog. I think just the calmingness of it and the appearance that it's just something soothing that's always kind of in motion near you is kind of nice.
Okay. What kind of food do you get for I know there's special food that you get for fish.
Yes.
Like that. So table scraps are taboo, right?
Yes. Typically, they're not going to like that too much, and they definitely have trouble eating it.
And that's something that too many times people with their animals want to give them table food, which is the world's worst thing that they could do.
Yes.
And certainly with fish. Are there things that I need to be aware of if I walk into, say, a store? Are there things that I kind of need to know ahead of time to ask the right questions? So that someone doesn't say, well, you know how stores can be. Well, you really need this size aquarium, you need this, and they're going to try to sell you all kinds of things. What are the basic things, the basic questions that you need to have in mind and need to ask when you're there?
I would say the first thing, have an idea of your price, like what you're willing to spend for it. Usually whoever is going to be helping you is going to have a good idea of what you can do with that amount of money. I would also ask if you have a certain fish that you know for sure you really like, what would it take to be able to keep that fish long term. And really just that asking questions in general, even if you think you've asked a question similar, just being free to ask questions, like not being afraid of it, that's probably going to be the most important thing, because they'll definitely be able to help you.
And I know one of the things that you have to worry about is, as you mentioned a little bit a minute ago, compatibility of different fish. In other words, if I have a goldfish, what are some fish that I could put, well, you said goldfish kind of by themselves, but given the other kinds of fish, you have to be pretty careful, don't you, that you don't have, say, put two fish in there that are not compatible.
Yes. There are definite species of fish that are more aggressive than others, but such as cichlids in general are going to be highly aggressive, and they're even highly aggressive within their own sets. So there are South American and there are African cichlids. They don't mix with each other typically, but they do fine within their own groups usually. Then there's also semi-aggressive fish, which can go with the friendlier fish, but you've got to be really careful that you know which ones you're putting together exactly. So.
Alrighty, well, that makes some good sense. Now, one of the things that people may wonder about, do I need male fish and female fish? Or do I need all of one or all of the other, or mixture, or what? What's the best thing for that?
Most commonly, you're only going to be searching out the male and females with live bearer fish, like there are guppies that have live bearings. Mollies do as well, and so do platies. Typically, people who are searching for the male and female fish, they want those baby fish. So if you do happen to get a pairing that's male and female and you don't want them to have babies, usually with the live bearers you can identify it. So you can just buy one.
Either all male or all female.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to avoid the tons of little baby fish, basically.
Yes. Well, and because that can be a problem at that point too.
Yes.
Let's take our 10-gallon tank for a second. That was our small size. Is there a limit to the number of fish we should have in there? That's always a question I hear.
I would say usually it does depend on the fish, because you don't want to put too many small fish in an aquarium, but as a common kind of thing, it's usually an inch of fish per gallon. But I'll usually say that about 6 or 7 fish is going to be okay in a 10-gallon. Because people aren't going to put, usually you won't put fish that are too large in a 10-gallon because they're going to outgrow it. So.
Okay. Now, do the fish that you put in there, do you have to worry about them growing in size?
Sometimes. It does really just depend on what you get.
On what the fish are. Right?
Yes, definitely. Most what I will call tropical community fish that are going to be what will typically end up in a 10-gallon, they usually only grow to about 2 or maybe even 3 inches. It's usually 2 inches is about the cap for them.
Okay. But. Is there any kind of a ratio? For example, you mentioned like with a 10-gallon tank of maybe 6 to 7 fish. Suppose I could then go up to 100 gallons. Is there about how many fish would be a proper, again, depending on the kind of fish, of course, but just in general, about how many fish might I have in a, say, 100-gallon tank?
You could do a whole lot with 100 gallons, definitely.
Okay.
I would say if you're doing the tropical ones again, you could probably have anywhere from 50 to 60 fish. You would definitely want to add them slowly because you don't want to add a whole bunch of fish at once.
Okay.
But you could do a whole lot with that size tank, definitely.
And that comes now with your the size of your tank and the kind of, and we're going to talk a little bit later about what kind of things you might put in there, such as plants and base of it and that kind of thing. And we're getting a real interesting education this afternoon. If you've never dealt with an aquarium, and I have to confess I have never really done much with one, then you're getting some very valuable information. We want to take a moment now and take a short break, And we want you, those of you who have seen the program before know that many times we have a happy tale and as a transition, and often we have a forget-me-not. Today is a very special forget-me-not of a cat that Darlene and I lost recently. And so the show was dedicated to Woody, and here's a little story about Woody, so give a listen.
This is a forget-me-not about Woody, the cat. Woody was an approximately 14-year-old male cat with beautiful black and white tuxedo markings. Darlene found him in early 2003 in the woods near Lake Barkley. He had lived in the woods for at least 2 years and was definitely a feral cat. Darlene was able to trap him and took him to a local vet to be neutered and given shots, and found that he was in excellent health. Darlene brought him home, and a friend advised her to turn him loose back into the woods. If he's meant to come back, he will do so, the friend said. Darlene did so and shed many tears because she was afraid that she would never see Woody again. Approximately 9 days later, Woody appeared on her doorstep. He became a wonderful, loving house cat and showed no interest in going back outside. He had to learn to play with toys, and it was amusing to watch the process. He instantly got along well with the other cats in the household and was definitely Darlene's cat. In late July of 2015, he developed kidney problems and died. Darlene and Greg truly miss Woody and will never forget him.
Hello, and welcome back to our show. We're visiting this afternoon with Mary Farrell, who is an aquarium expert, and we've learned an awful lot in the first segment about what you do if you decide that you would like to have an aquarium in your home, and some of the benefits from it. And of course, it's not one of those things that you set up and then don't ever have to do anything with it. That's not the case, is it, Mary?
No, not at all.
And Mary's given us some very valuable information. Let's turn our attention now a little bit to the kind of fish we might want to put in the aquarium. We mentioned goldfish, and we have pictures of 3 fish, and you recommended these 3 fish to us.
Yes.
Tell us about, let's see, the first one is the neon tetra.
Yes.
What's interesting and good about this particular fish?
Neon tetras are a tropical community fish, but they school in particular. So you could have about 4 or 5 of these, and they group together really nicely. So it's very fun to watch them school together because they stay together as they move throughout the tank. So.
Okay. Now, suppose your tank is big enough to have more fish. Are there other fish that would work well with this particular type of fish? With
the tetras? Tetras are an easy fish to kind of match with. They're very docile as far as fish go. Usually you're going to put Danios with tetras. Mollies and platies will go well as well. Dwarf gouramis would do well, which is another kind of fish.
Okay.
But yeah, all those are going to do well. Cory catfish as well, they do really well with these kind of fish.
Okay. Now, we have a picture then of a rubber lip
Plecostomus?
Plecostomus.
Yes.
I have trouble with that word.
It stutters a lot of people. It's a difficult one to get through.
What's the particular advantage, or why would you recommend this particular fish as a possible fish?
I like the rubber lip Plecostomus a lot. They're an algae eater, which is definitely something you'll probably want to get in your tank. Although I would usually recommend people wait about a month after starting their tank before adding one. So there's something for him to nibble on down there. But rubber lip Plecostomus, they are a variation of Plecostomus, which we sell, they're just regular Plecostomus that are sold, and they grow to be like 1.5 feet. Which a lot of people get those, and then they'll outgrow their tank, and they have no idea what to do with this giant fish. So the rubber lip Plecostomus, I like them because they only get about 3 or 4 inches. And I think they're a little bit better at their job.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yes.
I mean, I can see the problem if you get a fish that's too big for your tank.
Because they start out very small, so it's kind of deceptive. But
Yeah. We'll maybe talk about a couple of those a little bit later. Now, there's the third one that you've recommended, the zebra danio.
yes,
Why do you like the zebra danio?
they are just a very easy fish to work with. They school as well, so groups of 3 or 4 is going to work really well. I'm partial to schooling fish. I think they're more entertaining in the tank because they typically are always moving around. But they're just easy fish, and they're very hardy fish as well. So
Okay. Now, you mentioned a little bit ago something about ones that like they'll help clean up your tank. What are the best fish for keeping maintenance on your tank of algae eaters, things like that? What are some of the types of fish that might be good for that?
Plecostomus in general are usually the most common, but also there are Chinese algae eaters, which are very popular, and the Cory catfish are really popular. They get about 3 inches, I would say.
Okay.
And you can have about 2 or 3 of those, and they come in all sorts of different colors, and some have spots and some don't, so you can really find a wide variety to add to your tank.
Okay. Now, we're putting the fish in the tank, and we've had them in there for a while, and we're doing the maintenance and things like that, but suddenly we see some fish that are not acting right. What are the telltale signs that you may have a fish that's ill or something like that?
A lot of times you'll see sluggish swimming, which is probably the most common. If they are staying near the top of the tank a lot, and they don't typically do that, a lot of times they're trying to get closer to where the oxygen is coming into the tank through the filter, cycling the water. A lot of times you'll see white dots, which is probably the most common illness, which is called ick with fish. The white dots is something, I think it's a bacterial infection on the fish, and that's pretty much the most common thing to look for. Any kind of sore as well is something you'll want to watch out for.
Now, if you find a fish then that you think is ill, what's the probability, of course depending on the condition, that it would spread to the other fish in the tank?
It's not uncommon that the disease will kind of move quickly through the tank, which is typically why you'll want to treat the whole tank. Even if it's just as like a preventative measure, you'll still want to treat all of the fish just to avoid any of them from getting sick.
How do we treat the fish?
There are tablets that you can use, but there's also liquid
Okay.
medicines that you can use.
So it's a matter then of keeping your water clean, and can you how can you test your water, like some kind of a stick that you can put in that will have certain colors, or what are the procedures for testing your water, and how often you need to do that?
Typically, I'd recommend testing anywhere from once every 2 to 3 weeks. You just kind of want to make sure you know what's going on in your tank, because the water is the biggest determinant of anything that's going to happen. So usually you'll test it with strips of some sort. Just scoop some water out and then put the strips in there and read it according to the directions on the package, and it'll give you a good idea of what's going on with your tank.
Okay, and that's something that you say do every 2 to 3 weeks.
Yes.
How often should I completely change the water, or should I ever completely change the water?
I would say you shouldn't really ever take it all out unless you're looking to restart it completely. I would say every 2-3 months you could cycle a third of the water out and add some fresh water. But usually if the tank has been okay, you shouldn't need to change the water.
Okay, now in the bottom of the tank, you often see little seaweed or things like what kind of things are good for the bottom of the tank to a material, things like that you would have on the bottom of it?
A lot of people like natural plants, live plants rather, and those are good. Usually you'll want some kind of substrate in the bottom to help the plants thrive a little bit, but it's usually just aquarium substrate, which is a form of like dirt basically, that you can mix in with your gravel, and it settles really well.
Well, let's see, we've covered, is there anything that we've missed at this point that you think of, Mary?
There are Another form of keeping your tank clean, you can add snails,
Okay.
which a lot of people like to do. Mystery snails, they're typically a lot bigger than most snails. They're going to be about an inch or so.
Okay.
They make really good something other than fish to add to keep your tank clean, definitely.
Anything besides snails?
Snails are definitely the most common. There are frogs as well you can put, aquatic frogs, but they don't really add to keeping the tank clean, really.
Well, I'll tell you, we are getting a real interesting education. I didn't know all these things about aquariums, and Mary, and we're getting ready to come to the end of the program, unfortunately. What one point would you like our viewers to remember?
It seems like a lot of information whenever you sit down and start learning about aquariums, but it's not as difficult as it may sound. They're very easy to maintain and keep going, so just don't be intimidated by it.
Okay. Well, I think that's advice very, very well spoken. So, anyway, coming to the end of things, and Mary Farrell, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and giving our viewers a real good taste. And if they want more information, is there a phone number that they could reach you at?
Yes, it is 270-575-9300.
Okay, and you can get good advice there.
Yes.
And you can ask for Mary, and she'll be more than happy to
Yes.
to help you. And but Mary, again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I know I've thought about aquariums, and after talking with you this afternoon, I'm going to think more seriously about them. So again, thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. Unfortunately, we're to the end of our show. That time just passes too quickly with this. So, in closing, I'd like to just remind you what I tell you every time. Give your pet a little extra love today and every day. See you next time.